Our next presenter is Director Leo Asuncion. Director Asuncion is the director of the Office of Planning in the state of Hawaii. He has over 25 years of experience in planning in various sectors. He's also active with a number of professional and community organizations and currently sits on the APA National Board of Directors. Mr. Asuncion is a graduate of McKinley High School in Honolulu and earned his bachelor's in political science and his master's in urban and regional planning from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He has also obtained a MBA from Hawaii Pacific University. Today, he will be presenting on the Special Action Team on Affordable Rental Housing and the 10-year plan. Please welcome Director Leo Asuncion.
Thanks to Senator Stanley Chang, who is actually my senator. I come from his district. So for putting on this housing conference. And we just wanted to share with you, this is the work of about 18 months worth of work that has already been done and coming up with in response to legislation that was passed about two years ago to come up with one, looking at our affordable rental segment and how we can make sure that we meet some of the goals and the demands that were provided from a study back in 2015. That study was the old DBED housing study, still in existence, still relevant, where total it was basically saying we need 66,000 affordable units, so housing units, no matter what, if it's rental or not, by 2025. What this particular action team, the special action team that was created by Act 127, session laws in 2016, and it not only established a special action team to come together and start to work on different tasks that were assigned in the statute or in the act, but also it set forth the goal, right? And the goal was 22,500 affordable rental units completed by December 31st, 2026. And I'll go into some other criteria on how we can count and which units we can count later on in my presentation. But basically, you see the members here up on this slide. There are 13 members, basically consisting of county and state housing agencies, members of the legislature. Representative Hashem was the appointee, and Senator Espero was the appointee from the Senate. And they were sat on all of the meetings. We did have all the county housing directors, as well as members of the public appointed by the governor. And you see them here. One was the Affordable Housing Advocacy. I know Reverend Nakata is here today. He was a member of the action team. Non-profit developers, which was Keith Kato from the island of Hawaii, and also for-profit developers, who was Stanford Carr here in Honolulu. So these are people we convened for the good part of 2017 to sit them in a room and start to help us do the tasks that was asked of the Office of Planning as the chair of the action team. So you see here just a summary of the duties that we had. Develop a 10-year plan that identifies land that are suitable for affordable housing units, and I'll get into that, and also provide performance measures and recommendations on how to achieve completion of those 22,500 affordable rental units statewide by the due date. The unique thing about the action team, it's truly an action team task force. It does sunset next year, December 31st, 2019. So the 10-year plan, these are all the components that are in there. It's available online. We also have a couple of hard copies, and you can see me. I do have one of my staff members here, Deborah Mendez. I think she's somewhere. And she'll be here. I'm going to apologize right now. I'm going to have to run off to another speaking engagement, which actually started already. But I'll try to make it back for the afternoon sessions, but Deborah is here, and I believe one of our other planners, Jane Tam, will also be coming afterwards to try to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll try to get to some questioning right now. Okay. And then, right, we're looking at also the identification of barriers. Those were in the statute, so we have discussion points on those and recommendations. Looking at priority projects. One thing that we strive to do, right, in identifying land, and you'll see the amount of land that's actually available. And we put it into different tiers, but you'll see the total amount, is not to shove that all down on the county, because they basically have to look at their infrastructure, their other items that you need to do due diligence on, so that what we ask them to do is take a look and what do you know what's happening in your counties right now, and what are priority projects for you. And I'll get to that because it was in the discussion of the baseline of how many units when we started, and then you'll see as we started to collect all the different projects, you'll see what's in the pipeline that we feel, the action team feels will be completed by that 2026. And when I say completed, it's not just breaking ground, it's actually turnkey. Right? That was the definition provided to us. And then also implementing some actions, and we have a slide on that as well. So starting off with the identification of county, state, and private lands. We had to identify all the different lands. And you see here what we call Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 being urban state land use district, properly zoned at the county at this time for multifamily housing, away from the shoreline, not in the conservation districts. Infrastructure and utilities, things like bus routes, no more than a half a mile away right now, right? And that had to go towards costs, right? Because the farther away your infrastructure, you have to bring it in. That's additional cost, additional time for the project. And that's where we get to like Tier 2, right? It's this something that's probably not zoned at this time properly. So you need to go get a rezoning at the county level, which takes time, which eats into the development time in order to get to the end goal and the end date. And then you also have Tier 3, which is on the next slide, that kind of has our agricultural land, right? What the task force didn't want to do is leave out what could be potentially in the future, right? But they're really Tier 3. When you look at those lands, you'll see huge acreages, but at the same time, they're the most challenging to try to develop by December 31st, 2026. So you see here the acreages. So Tier 1, you see it by county, you see it by state-owned in each of the counties, and what is privately owned, and then some totals. Now, all of this is actually in the report itself. It's in the OLI appendix. It's actual maps, and we can get actually down to the parcel level. So you can imagine, like, just for 10,000 acres, the database for that, if you were to look at the raw data, that's like a binder, right? Each parcel is identified, and we can tell you who the landowner is, if it's county, state, if it's private landowner, right? We also try to discount in Tier 1. We did one exercise where we tried to look at if it's already being used, right? We wanted to really say Tier 1 lands being, really the low-hanging fruit, that you could look into it a little bit more to do some due diligence, but you could get a project going and get some units up on that parcel or parcels. So you see here Tier 2, right? Obviously, you start to get more acreage, but again, the constraints and the challenges you might have in order to bring the land and all the zoning and then bring it into a unit by that deadline. And then Tier 3, right? Obviously the largest one, but then also the most challenging, that it might take you, 5 to 7 years to get everything lined up and then actually start development. Maybe you can do it by then, maybe you can't, right? I mean, we all hear, right? I think we hear from the developers, right? Like the State Land Use Commission, right? Takes a while to go through that process. Takes a while to go through county zoning and the like, and whether or not they do the whole parcel. So those are the types of challenges we see that we we wanted to keep it realistic and say, we just don't want to say, yeah, you can go develop, but think about all these other things, because what we had was that deadline, right? That was a no drop dead or drop dead date, basically, to get everything completed. So looking at the baseline, when we first started back in January 2017, and we convened everyone, okay, let's take a step back. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The units, when we counted, what can we count? So you see here that any existing unit that's converted to affordable rental, so it could be a rehab, could be taking an old condo, could be taking a warehouse and you turn it into affordable units, rental units. And if they were in another category before December 31st, but completed within the time frame by December 31st, we could count that unit. The second one is the more challenging one. If they got entitlements, right? So say they had notice to proceed and got their final entitlements at the county, ready to go, but they got their entitlement before December 31st, 2016, and they didn't complete the project until the next 10-year tranche, we cannot count that for this purpose. Although we know, right, those units are important as well. They're coming online. It's just the timing. This is how the legislature wrote this thing, to really concentrate on that 10 years that they gave us to look at. So that's really the challenge there. So that's reflected in that baseline number, right? At the time we started, we only knew that would meet the above criteria of 187 units in the pipeline, right? That would be completed by 2026 and got their entitlements after January 1, 2017. But then as we went and then we took the 18 months to develop the report, we started to look at what other projects are there, right? And that's when we went to the counties. We asked the private landowners, do you know of anyone? Even if it was still a concept, give us that information so we can inventory it. So now we also have in the report basically all the projects that make up some of these, right? 40 projects in the county of Honolulu, resulting in 8,375 affordable units. Now you total that up, and that's only about 12,000 plus units, and we got to get to 22,000, right? So, but we do know there's segments out there that might be contributing to this. One that we have been asked of us is, what about Hawaiian Homelands? Hawaiian Homelands, when we started, right, there wasn't an indication that they would be into rentals, and rentals that's available to everyone, right? Not just their beneficiaries. So that was one of the things, right? We are looking at it's available to everyone, 0 to 140% AMI. And you'll see in the report as well, we do break it down even by AMI levels, right? What is projected for us to build, in the next 10 years. So you see that. And then also the caveat on these numbers, there are some projects that, because it's still a concept, they really don't know how many affordable units they're going to generate, right? But we put them on there because it's just a list. And then as we track the progress of these projects, as we hear about new ones, and sometimes the only way we find out is like in PBN, right? Or in the newspaper, because we just don't have any way of knowing when, right? Like even a rehab project comes up and we can count that, right? It's usually at some point in time, and then we get in touch with who's doing the project, and we then talk to them and say, we want to include it in the count. So it's going to be a dynamic count when it's all said and done. But this is the best information we have as of June 30th, 2018. So we also looked at the identification of barriers, and you see later on, what our recommendations are. But here are the barriers that the legislature thought that we needed to address, right? The use of more use of public lands. Is there adequate infrastructure for this type of growth? Funding as well. Regulations and permitting, looking at duplication, looking at how we can expedite it. And also more importantly too, an important factor is preserving this existing stock, right? Because that's another one of the issues, right? We have a stock now, but then, right, either it becomes unaffordable or, right, it turns into something else. So that's part of it, right? We don't want net zero game at the end. We want to be actually adding to meet the demand. So looking at those priority projects, right? And this is just a summary. In the Honolulu, what we did is we went to each county and we said, what are projects that you know of or really want to do and that you feel as a county would be completed by 2026, right? So in Honolulu County, they came with their list, right? It totals about 288 acres. It's a mix of county and state lands, not so much private land. And you see here the numbers that the minimum and the maximum that they think they could get out of that. Similar to Kauai County, a little bit smaller. One of the things I think recently that I have been saying, right, a lot of it going to the counties. I mean, we could force the projections onto them and Kauai would like just boom in population. But is that what the county wants? Right, so that's another factor that in the due diligence, right? I mean, County of Kauai, I mean, I was joking yesterday, and I know Kanani's here from the county, right? It's like for the longest time, the population was at 60,000, and that's what I always been saying. And only recently I heard that it's actually 70,000, right? So that, right, if we're gonna force all of these affordable units, maybe that's not what they want either. So that's why we went to the counties and said, kind of give us, right, ground us a little bit, right? And you see later why we did this as well. So you see here, right, Maui County, and then like for Hawaii County, right, they had their projections, but that's only for 3 of the 10 projects, because the other 7 are more conceptual at this point, so they haven't given it much thought as far as what can they get out of that particular project. So the 10-year plan and the implementing actions. So trying to achieve the goal, right? What we want to do, one takeaway is let's pursue those county projects, those priority projects. Let's figure out what they need in order to make those projects go. Is it infrastructure? Is it funding? Is it financing? What is it to get those projects going? And at least start there, right? And we also want to look at, right, those tier 1 lands, right, that are state and county owned, right? How can we effectuate that? I know I had a discussion with someone just earlier, and like in Honolulu, right, the carve out that we have in one of the maps is the TOD area, right? And I harken back, right, when you look at the DBED project, the DBED report back in 2015, as well as this report, right, the assumption is Honolulu is going to take about 40%. 40% of the demand is in Honolulu, right? And I remember someone coming to me and he said, can't we just fit all 22,500 units in the TOD area in Honolulu? And I told them I could, or we could, but then what about the other counties? Does that put them deeper into an affordable housing crisis, right? Where we don't pay attention to them. So that's why I kind of tempered it as well, right? And even through TOD, right, automatically everybody's thinking TOD and housing, you're talking high rise. Not necessarily, right? I always like to say it's going to be to scale, because some neighborhoods, they're not going to want 12, 20-story buildings, apartments of affordable units. Although that might be the easy way to do it. But again, right, there's all of these other items that we need to take into account as we start to develop these projects and also get to the goal. Addressing the barriers to rental housing, right? Really getting more state agencies participating in county agencies, looking at developing the state lands, and then encourage public-private partnerships. And it's not so much as a procurement method, right, which is the focus of a couple of bills that have come through. It's more, let's just really try to look at, right, the private sector helping us in order to develop these types of housing, right? And that's one message the special action team wanted to send as well. Here's the land, right? Including private land, right? So a developer can go and talk to the county or the state or the private landowner and try to say, hey, right, you're in this tier one. Have you thought about affordable housing? I want to partner up with you, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one of the messages we wanted to send out with the maps. Addressing the infrastructure challenges. This is one of the key takeaways, I think, and we're having to deal with it, right now, right? In order to accommodate all of this growth, you're going to have to take care of the infrastructure, and I think that's first, right? Before you go vertical development, you got to really take a look at the infrastructure, and it's not so much maintaining what we got or improving what we got, but we also have to look at what are the prudent additions, right? Regionally, we're looking at it from a regional concept. It's not that parcel by parcel type, right? And how can government play in providing that, right? Either through financing, or is it pure cash, right, to do it, and then kind of, get out of the way and let the private market, or is it in partnership? So things like that. That's what we think we need to really start looking at. How do we really pay for all of this infrastructure? Streamlining, of course, this has been, right, a topic for many decades. I remember when I first started in planning almost 30 years ago, one of the first discussions was affordable housing and the duplication of regulations, right? And this one, I think it's not surprise to anyone, right? We do have a group of people working with the governor, looking at issues like this, right? Duplication, looking at our internal processes in the state. So we made some headway there, right? But this is really looking at, can we provide, right, some coordinated effort to get the permitting, the regulation, not only eliminated, but also look at, is there a way to kind of expedite it? Right, we have some now, right? 201H and all of that. But, right, I think what we're talking about in trying to do it, again, within the time frame, we're gonna need something, right? And some political will to make sure we can meet these goals. And then, of course, preserving the existing stock, right? We wanna look at, how can we facilitate either acquisition or rehab of rental housing units, right? We think that's a kind of like a near-term thing for the action team to try to support, get behind, and try to do, and including with all of our partners, all of you as well, and all the different groups that are working on affordable housing. So that's it. I think I can take a couple of questions, and then I'll leave it. You can talk to my staff who's here, and again, they'll then identify themselves and like two questions. Adrian says two.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know if there are maps available that shows the locations of the project and the size of each individual project. Thank you.
Could you repeat that again?
Are there maps available that show the location of these projects and the size of each individual project? Thank you.
Yes, there are, because they're identified by tax map key parcel, and we have a list in the report that shows the projects that we know of now. Some of them may be more, the ones that are further down the line, like towards 2024, 25, 26, right? At this point, it might be part of a bigger parcel. So that's not indicative of the actual, they're going to use like all 400 acres, right? And that's why for those, they may not have how many units, right? They haven't got to the point of actually what are they going to put there, but we have, and they have, those who are proposing it, have kind of identified, here are the locations.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Step one, right? Anyway, it was great to hear that we have, you know, an inventory of lands now. And, but the second thing is financing. I went to a presentation recently where, I can't remember who it was, had gone through all of the reports about affordable housing back to the 1970s and found out that from everyone from the 70s, the one in the 70s and the one in the 80s and the one in the 90s, all targeted two things that we all know about. Number one, we do have state land which we now develop for affordable housing, right? Which you, thank goodness, now have an inventory of. And number two, financing. They all mentioned that we should tap the REIT tax loophole, real estate investment trust tax loophole. According to former legislator Gary Hoosier, if we redirected the money that we give to these mostly offshore investors who pay practically no taxes on the investments here because because of the structure of it, we could redirect $300 to $500 million a year to affordable housing. That at least is a way forward. The question is this state and is this legislature and this is legislature and is this administration capable of having the political will to do that? I realize it's not easy, but we need the money. We are now giving away $300 million to $500 million to investors who are exacerbating our housing crisis. You know, it's just the whole, we all know this, you know, same problem. So is it possible to create the political will to get this money back so that we can use it for Hawaii's needs? Thank you.
I'll just answer that. Right, this is something that we did not, the task force did not look at, right? And it's not, I think, it's not even within the bandwidth of the task force to do. Can you create political will? Of course you can. I mean, right? But like you said, right, it's going to take everybody. And I think there's an acknowledgement, right, that it is to try to solve this particular issue and probably other issues as well, right? It's going to take all of us, right? What we wanted to do here in this action plan or the 10-year plan was at least to start off, and here is the best available data that we have right now, right? And we continue to look at it, right? It's more internal within our office because I can tell you, right, because of the sunset date and it's a true task force, right, we have not gotten any additional funding. So we're doing it out of OP's regular operating budget, right? My staff to try to maintain this and try to still get everybody together. One of the unique things about the task force is even after they sunset, all the members of the task force can still advocate for what's in this plan, right? To do the implementing actions, to make sure that it's kind. All they need to do is identify themselves as a former member of the task force, so they can come to the legislature if they feel so inclined, right? So that's what we've been telling, because we can't, right, bring everyone together, right, to meet. We do it by email and we say, hey, here's a potential thing that we think everybody should get behind. You choose to do so as a member of the task force, and then after December 31st, if there's still things that need to be done, right, because we're looking through 2026, that, right, they can still be advocates for it, making sure, and, you know, Office of Planning is the staff behind it, and we'll do our best to keep updating the data, showing where we need to head to, right, as far as the actions that are in the report. All right. Anyway, I don't know if Deborah did raise her hand. Where's Deborah? Deborah's back there. And I think shortly Jane Tam will be here as well, so they can answer your questions. They'll be here throughout the rest of the conference. I'm going to try to make it back. I'm going to run to Plaza Club and then back and do a speech there. But I want to thank everyone again, and we look forward to really trying to hit all of our goals for affordable rental housing. Right? Thank you.